Have you ever noticed people slowly pulling away from you or from someone you care about without any clear argument or fallout? No fight, no big moment, just distance. Conversations get shorter, invitations stop coming, and you're left wondering what changed. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the behaviors that create that distance aren't intentional, and they aren't even about personality. There's subtle psychological shifts that tend to appear with age, and most people never realize they're happening. In this video, we're breaking down 11 age-related traits that quietly push people away, not to judge, but to understand. Because once you see them, you can stop the cycle before it turns into loneliness. Section 1. The stability shield. Here's one of the great ironies of aging. As people get older, they generally become more emotionally stable. After decades of navigating life's curveballs, they've built up a kind of emotional expertise. They tend to report fewer negative emotions and bounce back from them faster than younger people. This sounds great, right? But it can create an unexpected barrier. Imagine you're upset about something and you turn to an older parent for comfort. You're looking for someone to share your outrage or give you some intense empathy. Instead, they offer a calm, almost detached perspective. From their point of view, they're using their hard-won emotional skills to help you. But to you, it can feel like they're being dismissive, cold, or that they just don't care as much as they used to. This stability shield was built for protection over a lifetime, but when it's misunderstood, it can block the very connection you're looking for, leaving you both feeling alone. Section 2. Selective social investment. You might notice that an older person's social circle seems to be shrinking. They skip more parties, let casual friendships fade, and seem happier with their own company. It's easy to take this personally, especially if you're one of the people they're seeing less of. But this usually isn't a story of social decline. It's one of very deliberate, even if subconscious, social investment. There's a fascinating concept in psychology called socio-emotional selectivity theory. It suggests that as our perception of how much time we have left gets shorter, our goals change. We stop focusing on networking or gathering new information and start prioritizing emotionally meaningful experiences. Older adults aren't trying to push people away. They're reallocating their limited social energy toward the relationships that give them the highest quality connection. While this pruning process is good for their well-being, it can be deeply hurtful to friends or family who find themselves outside that smaller, more intimate circle. Section 3. The communication gap. Communication is so much more than just words. As we age, a few physical and cognitive changes can create a frustrating gap between what someone wants to say and what actually comes out. For instance, age-related hearing loss is incredibly common, affecting about half of adults over 70. An older person might seem like they're ignoring you or being uncooperative, but in reality, they're struggling to follow the conversation and might be too embarrassed to keep asking you to repeat yourself. Cognitive changes, like a natural slowing in how fast the brain processes information, also play a big role. They might need an extra moment to find the right word or put a thought together, which can lead to shorter, more blunt replies, or even just silence. Add chronic pain or fatigue into the mix, which makes the simple act of a conversation feel exhausting, and you've got a recipe for misunderstanding. Their silence often isn't a judgment on you. It's a sign that they're wrestling with the huge effort that communication now demands. Section 4. The irritability trigger. We all know the stereotype of the grumpy old person. It's one of the toughest ones to deal with. But here's the thing. Research often shows that qualities like agreeableness and warmth tend to increase with age. So when you do see persistent irritability in an older adult, it's rarely because their personality has soured. More often, it's a direct symptom of an underlying struggle. Think of that irritability as a warning light on a car's dashboard. It's not the problem itself, but it's signaling that something is wrong. Chronic pain, side effects from medication, poor sleep, or a decline in senses like hearing and sight can all shorten someone's fuse and drain their patience. It's a physiological response to constant discomfort. This irritability pushes people away at the exact moment when support is needed most. It creates a painful loop where physical suffering lead to social isolation, which in turn just make everything worse. Section 5. The experience filter. When you've lived for 60, 70, or 80 years, you've seen a thing or two. You've made mistakes, you've celebrated wins, and you've watched the world change in ways younger people can only read about. This lifetime of experience builds what you could call a powerful experience filter. When an older person offers advice, they're pulling from this deep well of knowledge. To them, they're offering a gift, a shortcut to help you avoid a pitfall they already stumbled into. But to the person on the receiving end, that gift can feel a lot like criticism, negativity, or a vote of no confidence. When every new idea is met with, "Oh, I tried that back in '85, it'll never work," or "You kids have it so easy," it feels invalidating. This isn't meant to be dismissive. Their brain is just automatically connecting your situation to a pattern they've seen before. The problem is, this wisdom can create a ton of friction, making younger people feel judged and hesitant to share their lives at all. Section 6. Cognitive rigidity. There's a well-known trade-off that happens in our brains as we age. Our fluid intelligence, which is the ability to solve brand new problems and think flexibly, tends to decline. This can show up as what we might call stubbornness, but psychologists refer to it as cognitive rigidity. It could be an insistence on doing a task a certain way, a flat-out refusal to try new technology, or an unwillingness to see a different point of view. This isn't a moral failing. As our brains get older, they start to rely more on established neural pathways, the mental roads that are already paved and well-traveled. Carving out new ones takes more energy. The upside is that this is often balanced by a boost in crystallized intelligence, the deep well of accumulated knowledge and wisdom from a lifetime. But the trait becomes a problem when the inflexibility over small things, like the right way to load the dishwasher, starts to overshadow that wisdom, making everyday life feel like a battle of wills. Section 7. The apathy signal. When an older person starts to lose interest in hobbies, friends, or even family activities they once loved, it can be deeply unsettling. It's easy to see this apathy as a sign they just don't care about you anymore. But apathy isn't a choice. It's often a signal of profound distress. It's not a normal part of aging, but is strongly linked to health issues like depression, early cognitive decline, or a psychological reaction to feeling chronically left out. Imagine trying to engage with the world but constantly feeling unheard, misunderstood, or physically unwell. After a while, the emotional energy it takes to even try becomes too high. Apathy becomes a form of psychological self-preservation, a way to conserve what little energy is left and protect yourself from more pain. It's crucial to see it not as a personal insult, but as a symptom. It's a quiet call for help, signaling that their mental or physical health needs attention before they can ever hope to reconnect. Section 8. The echo of loss. Aging is a process of accumulation. You collect wisdom, memories, and experiences. But it's also a process of profound loss. Over the decades, an older person loses friends, siblings, and often a spouse. They lose careers that helped define their identity, mobility that gave them freedom, and social roles that provided a sense of purpose. These losses aren't isolated events. They're cumulative, and they create echoes that can completely change a person's world. A once extroverted person who was the life of the party might become quiet and withdrawn. It's not because they suddenly decided they don't like people. It's often because the very people who helped create their social world are gone. Their quietness is a form of grief. For loved ones who only knew the before version of them, this change can feel like a personal rejection. They aren't necessarily pulling away from you. They're just trying to navigate a world that feels much emptier than it used to. Section 9. Phantom loneliness. There's a huge difference between being alone and feeling lonely. Social isolation is the objective fact of having few social contacts. Loneliness, however, is a subjective, painful feeling of being disconnected, and it can happen in a room full of people. This phantom loneliness is one of the most damaging traits because it's completely invisible to outsiders. An older adult can be surrounded by a loving family that visits all the time, yet feel deeply lonely if they believe no one truly understands their fears, shares their memories, or meets their deepest emotional needs. This internal loneliness can cause them to act in confusing ways. They might become clingy and demanding, or do the opposite and withdraw completely, convinced that no one can help anyway. Both behaviors can strain relationships and push away the very people whose connection they crave, creating a heartbreaking cycle of being alone in a crowd. These cycles of misunderstanding are so common, but we almost never talk about them. If you saw a loved one, or even yourself, in any of these descriptions, please share which one hit home in the comments below. Your story might be the one that helps someone else feel seen and finally understood. Section 10. The rational response to rejection. Here's another surprising finding from research. Older adults are often just as aware of social rejection as younger people, but they tend to react to it differently. While a younger person might get intensely upset, an older person's brain, honed by experience, may process it more rationally. They're more likely to de-escalate conflict and not take things as personally. This might sound like a superpower, but it has a hidden social cost. A spouse or a child might see this lack of a big emotional reaction not as maturity, but as proof that the older person just doesn't care. For example, I told him I felt completely left out, and he just nodded and said, "That's unfortunate." The rational response, which was intended to prevent drama, gets misinterpreted as cold indifference. This drives a wedge where one person feels hurt and invalidated, and the other is just confused about why they're being accused of not caring. Section 11. The burden of purpose. According to the famous psychologist Erik Erikson, the biggest challenge in our later years is the battle between integrity versus despair. This is the stage where we look back on our lives and either feel a sense of satisfaction and wholeness or a sense of regret and despair. When an older person feels like they failed to contribute something meaningful or are no longer useful, it can trigger deep feelings of despair. This powerful need to feel relevant can cause people to act in ways that, ironically, push others away. It might look like a constant stream of unsolicited advice, an overbearing need to help in a way that feels more like taking over, or telling the same stories about past glories over and over. This isn't arrogance. It's often a desperate attempt to feel valued in a world that can make older adults feel invisible. When those attempts to contribute are brushed off or seen as annoying, it confirms their single worst fear, that they've become a burden. This can cause them to retreat in despair, completing the very circle they were trying so hard to break. The journey of aging is so much more psychologically complex than most of us realize. These 11 traits aren't a list of complaints. They're a call for empathy. They show us that the behaviors that create distance are often born not from anger or indifference, but from pain, loss, physical ailments, and profound psychological shifts. That withdrawn parent, that irritable neighbor, that distant friend, they are often fighting a silent battle, and the distance you feel is a symptom of their struggle. Breaking this cycle doesn't take some grand gesture. It just starts with a change in perspective. It's choosing to see irritability as a possible sign of pain. It's seeing silence as a potential struggle to communicate, and withdrawal as a quiet response to a shrinking world. By replacing our judgment with curiosity, we can start to bridge that gap and offer the one thing that truly makes a difference: compassionate understanding. And in doing that, we not only help them, we learn how to navigate our own journey into older age with a little more grace and a lot more connection.